Welcome to Mortality with Meep. And in this second video with regards to excess mortality or excess deaths from the CDC, this is where I've downloaded some data from here. So this is the excess deaths associated with COVID-19 where they have their Tableau dashboard. If you go up here, you'll see a CSV format, which is comma separated values, national state estimates. Last night I downloaded this, so it's a slightly different data set from what you see here, but it's not that different. So let's take a look at the spreadsheet, and I can't give it away, that's the beginning. Let's go back to, here's the original data. Now this is in a data table format in Excel, but other than that I haven't touched it in terms of sorting and that kind of thing. So it's kind of a bit over the place. Here are the columns it comes with. The week ending date, so that's going to be a different date every year for the same number week, and you'll see how I dealt with that. The state name, then the observed number, which is the total number of deaths. Then we have, and actually, well, anyway, then there is this threshold that above that threshold you're considering it excess deaths. Fine. There's an indicator whether or not it exceeds threshold. This is something you can test yourself to see if this works the way it's supposed to. Same for the excess number of deaths. These are things you can calculate from those numbers in columns C and D. The year, again, should come from week ending date. And then you see total excess in 2020. So for a single state, you're going to see this same number over and over again, and then percent excess. Let me see if I can find anything appreciable. Yeah, here goes 0.1. That's, puny. In any case, yeah, the states are in alphabetical order. Then we have the type, and there is predicted weighted and unweighted, and that has to do with underreporting of COVID-19. And then the outcomes are all causes or all causes excluding COVID-19. This suppress thing, suppress counts 1 through 9, I guess it's because the death counts are too low to do much with it from a statistical standpoint. And so this is how the data came to me. What did I do with it? So first, actually, I built a week count table. I took the dates, the unique dates that they have in that file, and I started with 1/14/2017, which is obviously week number 2 from 2017 because it's ending the 14th. And so I came up with an index so that I could give week numbers for when I do my averages over 2017 to 2019 and then compare against the same week in 2020. So this is the way I will calculate the comparison against an expected number of deaths. So I took the original data set, I got rid of the weighted data points, I got rid of anything that involved trying to estimate how many COVID deaths there were. So all I cared about was all causes unweighted. So for each of these, and there was already a year. Yeah, I was not paying attention to my data set, obviously, but I calculated the year. You can see the year. And then I looked up the week number. I came up with a date key. I actually ended up not using this, and a key that has the date and the jurisdiction. Okay, and that's really the only things I did to make certain kinds of structures easier. I built a pivot table, which I believe I'm hiding right now, to create this, because this is just dates. I pasted from a pivot table. So I have the years and the weeks going across. These are consecutive in order, and United States, and then going down the various states. Okay, so now we can see week to week how stable it is state to state for something like, and I believe, is this Alaska? Yeah, it's Alaska. They're fairly small numbers, and so it's very easy for it to go to 88 to 58 to 80 over a couple weeks, and that's not suspicious, okay? They just don't have a very high population. Using that, I calculated average deaths from 2017 to 2019. I started with week 2 because I'm missing week 1 from 2017, and week 2 doesn't cover when we have the pandemic hitting with regards to death counts anyway. Okay, so that got calculated, and then here we go. My first visualization, I'm using conditional formatting in Excel, and I can show you that. So that's home. So conditional formatting, manage rules, so you can see what the rules are. I'm using a graded color scale, edit rule. I used a 3 color, even though it's all kind of on the same spectrum of reds. I like using reds for this. Go state. I went to North Carolina State University. Anyway, I can pick the different numbers. So I decided 95%, anything below 95%, I'm not interested in looking at. And the darkest, because some of these numbers get very high, if I use the default, only New York City would pop out. And that's not useful or interesting. And then for kind of a middling range, anything that was 10% above the average from 2017 to 2019, I really want to start highlighting it once it's higher than that, 10% greater. Okay, so I'll just cancel it because I'm not changing it. So some of the things to note, first I want to point out Connecticut. We are missing 8 weeks of data from Connecticut. Now in the visualization, it looked like they did have some of the Connecticut deaths, and maybe it's just because they weren't reporting the COVID deaths. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the Connecticut data. And it might be that the CSV file, they don't update at the same time as what they do for Tableau, but they really should. I don't know. Not quite sure what's going on with Connecticut. And North Carolina has a similar problem of missing data. Here's North Carolina, and I am missing 6 weeks from North Carolina. Okay, but some of the things I want to point out, there's a reason one should probably exclude Alaska and some of the smaller states, and that's because just there is a natural fluctuation of variability from having so few deaths to begin with. It is very difficult to get a good trend out of a low population situation. And it doesn't matter if it's pandemic or just regular life insurance. It's just not a large enough population to make any conclusions from. You have to aggregate it with other ones. With Arizona here, for example, so we see 10%. I'm not sure exactly how meaningful these numbers are, but that does seem like something. Maybe it's because Arizona had more people living there. I'm not sure what's going on with Arizona. But let's look at Colorado. So here we go. And I put the dates. There's the week number, but I have the dates up here. I did a lookup. So 110, 110, 121, 130. So that's that mid-April. And yeah, it falls off, and we can see most of the data for the 17 is not good enough. Even the New York City one, I don't trust that. It might be too low. Week 16 and 17 here, we probably don't have enough data from them. They're not complete enough to be able to make any conclusions from that yet. Illinois, we have this peak 128% on April 11th. This is Louisiana. This is, again, we don't have good data the last 2 weeks, so it's hard to say, oh, it peaked week ending April 11th and coming down. I can't say that from this specific data set. Let's see, Maryland. So Maryland has this peak April 11th and coming down, but again, how much to trust? Massachusetts really went high, 180 in the week ending April 18th. And again, maybe not all of those deaths are in yet. Michigan, 143. These are some pretty high fluctuations over some substantial states with substantial populations. This is not a fluke. This is not, oh, we're just going to name a whole bunch of deaths COVID-19, but the total deaths don't change. Now, if you look at New Jersey, this is over 200%. So over double what we normally get. It's even worse for New York City. Here in the worst weeks we have here, it's over 500%, over 600%, 5 times, 6 times what you would expect. That's huge, huge. It really is very, very large. This is not fooling around, guys. New York State, even excluding New York City, was twice, week ending April 11th. It's a lot of deaths that really, really, really is happening. Okay, this is not, I mean, I get it. I understand why you might be suspicious of deaths being labeled from a specific cause when there might be various incentives for doing so. But all the evidence that we see with regards to excess deaths versus the official COVID-19 counts, if anything, undercounting is going on, as seen in the Tableau visualization. And let me back this sucker up. So this is a visualization type I like to use called the tile grid map. And I got it from Policyviz.com, the original template. And I keep changing it for my own purposes. I changed the color scheme. In this one, I added a New York City. And look, this is not geographically accurate, obviously. The states aren't squares. But because of the complex ways they bound each other, when you distort everything to make them equal size squares, it doesn't really work. The whole idea, though, is using this instead of what's called a choropleth, which is using a geographically accurate map, but coloring each state in with its values like I'm doing here. Choropleths, though, can be very misleading because you have states such as Montana and Alaska, which are huge and have puny population sizes. And then you can't see smaller states such as Delaware or even Washington, D.C., which is not a state. We're not going there, but it's an important locale. So some of the small states kind of fall off even if they have decent sized populations. Anyway, the tile grid map is a way to rectify this in a fairly simplified form. Ideally, you would have a distorted shape for each state that's based on their population size and not about their geographic footprint. Anyway, let's go back to this. So I have set this up so that you can change what numbers you have for the condition. This is another conditional formatting approach. I can change the threshold where this pinky red starts. So I could make that 50%, say. So it all updated. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference, but what's happening here is when there's less than 50%, I'm just assuming you're missing a lot of data. Now, 50% is a very low threshold. I actually prefer something more like 80%. So let's do 80%. We've already lost somebody. Let me push it back to 70%. Who did we lose? Oh, we lost Connecticut. Okay, so let me do 70%. I do trust Connecticut a little bit, January 11th, but we can move this forward. And, in January, not anything much is going on. So let's just go towards the end of February, and we've lost Connecticut. Oops, it's February, okay. So we've lost Connecticut. We're going to lose somebody else soon. We're going to lose North Carolina. Okay, so this is the end of February. Now we're starting to move through March. Now we've lost North Carolina. So Connecticut and North Carolina are missing at this point because I don't have good data for them. So mid-March, getting towards the end of March. Boom. New York City, popping up. It's going to get worse. Here we go, New York City, and New Jersey. And then that's the worst one so far, April 11th. Massachusetts, New York City, New Jersey are the worst. New Hampshire, so we see Michigan, Illinois. These are pretty bad. Maryland, D.C., South Carolina, Pennsylvania. So we've got some bad experience. Louisiana, which we don't, not surprising. Wyoming and Colorado. Once we start getting past April 11th, though, we're losing data. We don't have enough data. So we see states start to disappear because I don't have enough data for them. You know, this is only going to get worse, and the New York City numbers are just going to be horrendous by the end of this year. And, you know, these are real. I have this spreadsheet sitting on my Dropbox. I will put the link for this in the notes for the video. You can play with this yourself. I hope to revisit this in a month or two, perhaps, you know, depending on if the CDC keeps updating this data, because it will be interesting to see, you know, this is May 6th vintage data. What will it be like in July? I don't know. Let's see. And even for what will the April data look like, because past the April 11th, you know, I don't have good data here in terms of excess deaths. So that's just, it takes time to get good data. I'm sorry, guys, it's the truth. But, you know, get yourself a few tools. You can play around with this. Try it out for yourself. What I'm doing here is not a very complicated analysis. I think most numerate people will be able to understand this. There are more complicated analyses that go on. I might talk about some of them in the future, such as age-adjusted death rates, but that might be getting a bit esoteric, and it's not very helpful for the conversation here. So, download the spreadsheet and have fun.